Joon had been lying to her for 3 months, and Maya was about to find out why. Joon had been lying to her for 3 months, and Maya was about to find out why. The morning after Soon-hee's mass text, Maya woke up on Hannah's couch to 127 unread messages. Concerned friends. Nosy acquaintances. Joon's cousin asking if the cancellation was because of cultural issues. A former colleague from the English Academy asking if she was okay emotionally. But nothing from Joon. She sat up, her body aching from a night spent crying, and checked his location on her phone. They'd shared it months ago, back when trust was easy and love felt like enough. He was at the restaurant. His mother's restaurant in Busan. Maya's heart sank. He'd gone back to her. Hannah emerged from her bedroom, already dressed, 2 coffee cups in hand. She took one look at Maya's face and knew. He's with her, isn't he? Maya nodded, unable to speak. Hannah sat down beside her, handed her the coffee. Maybe he's telling her off. Maybe he's been there since 4 a.m. Hannah. That's not a confrontation. That's... Maya's voice broke. That's him going home. Maya. She won. Maya set the coffee down, her hands shaking too hard to hold it. Soon he cancelled our wedding, humiliated us in front of everyone, and within 12 hours, Joon's back with her. She won. Hannah grabbed Maya's shoulders. Look at me. You don't know what he's doing there. You don't know what he's saying. Don't write the ending before you know the story. Maya's phone buzzed. Text. From Joon. I need you to come to Busan, please. There's something I have to tell you. Something I should have told you months ago. Maya stared at the message. What do I do? She whispered. Hannah looked at her friend. This woman who'd been broken down piece by piece by a family that saw her as a threat, who'd questioned her own worth until she couldn't recognize herself anymore. You go, Hannah said firmly. You get on that train, you go to Busan, and you hear what he has to say. And then, and only then, you decide if this love is worth saving or if it's time to let it go. But you don't run before you know the truth. The train ride to Busan was 2 hours of Maya's mind spinning through every possibility. Maybe Joon had decided his mother was right. Maybe he'd realized the last 3 months had been a mistake. Maybe he was going to tell her, gently and with love, that they couldn't do this anymore. Or maybe, and this terrified her more, he was going to ask her to try again, to fight harder, to prove soon. He wrong for another 5 years, and then another and another, until they were both so tired they couldn't remember why they'd started fighting in the first place. When the train pulled into Busan station, Maya almost didn't get off. But then she saw him. Joon was standing on the platform, hands in his jacket pockets, hair still disheveled, dark circles carved deep under his eyes. When he saw her, relief washed over his face, relief mixed with something that looked like grief. He didn't hug her, didn't kiss her, just fell into step beside her as they walked toward the exit. Thank you for coming, he said quietly. You said you've been lying to me. Not lying. Hiding. There's a difference. Is there? They walked in silence to the restaurant. It was closed Friday morning before lunch service. Through the window, Maya could see Soon. He's sitting at a table, waiting. Maya stopped walking. I'm not going in there. You have to. No, I don't. Joon, I can't. I can't face her again. I can't sit there while she tells me all the reasons I'm not good enough for you. I can't. She's not going to do that. His voice was strange. Hello. Maya, please. What I need to tell you, I need to tell you with her there. 'Cause it involves her. And you both deserve to hear it at the same time. Maya looked at his face and saw something she'd never seen before. Shame. What did you do? She whispered. Come inside. Please. The restaurant smelled like sesame oil and soy sauce, the scent of Soon-hee's cooking, the scent that had clung to Joon's clothes for as long as Maya had known him. Soon-hee sat at the same table where they'd sat days ago, where Maya's recorded voice had played, where everything had shattered. Now soon he looked different. Smaller. Her perfect posture had crumbled. Her hands, usually folded so precisely, were gripping a cup of tea like it was the only thing keeping her anchored. When Maya and Joon entered soon he looked up. For the first time, Maya saw something in her eyes that wasn't calculation or disapproval. Regret. Sit, soon he said softly in English. Please. Maya sat across from her. Joon sat beside Maya, close enough that their shoulders touched but far enough that the distance between them felt like miles. I owe you an apology, soon he began, her English careful and deliberate. What I did, sending that message to everyone, it was unforgivable. Took your choice. I made your private pain public. Her voice cracked. I have been a terrible person to you. And I am sorry. Maya stared at her, stunned. But that's not why we're here, soon he continued. She looked at Joon. Tell her. Joon took a breath. His hands were shaking. 3 months ago, he began. When I first told my mother I was going to propose to you, she made me an offer. Deal. She said if I agreed to certain terms, she would attend our wedding. She would welcome you into the family. She would. His voice broke. She would try. Maya's throat tightened. What terms? She asked me to give up my share of the restaurant. To sign over my inheritance. To legally remove myself from the family business so that when she died, everything would go to my cousin instead of to our children. To our potential children who might be half American, half black, who might not speak Korean, who might not carry on the traditions she'd spent her life building. The words hit Maya like a physical blow. She wanted to make sure that even if I married you, the family legacy would stay pure. Joon's voice was bitter. And I agreed. What? Maya could barely breathe. I signed the papers. 3 months ago. I gave up my inheritance. Gave up my claim to the restaurant my father built. The business my mother sacrificed everything for. I gave it all up because she said it was the only way she'd accept you. Joon. Maya's voice broke. And then she went back on the deal anyway. Joon looked at his mother, and the pain in his eyes was devastating. I gave you everything you asked for, and you still tried to destroy us. Soon-hee's face crumpled. I know. No. And I have hated myself every day since. Then why? Joon's voice rose. Why did you make me choose? Why did you take everything from me and still, you couldn't just let me be happy? Because I was afraid. Soon-hee's composure shattered completely. Tears streamed down her face. I was afraid that if you married her, I would lose you completely. That you would move to America, that your children would grow up not knowing me, that I would die alone and forgotten. I was afraid that everything I sacrificed, your father's death, the years of working until my hands bled, raising you alone, all of it would disappear into a future I couldn't understand. She looked at Maya, her eyes red and raw. I was afraid of you, she said simply. Not because of who you are, but because of what you represent. A future I can't control. A world where my son's life doesn't include me. Maya sat frozen, her mind reeling. Joon had given up his inheritance. 3 months ago. Before the letter, before the recording, before the ultimatum. He'd sacrificed everything and he'd never told her. Why didn't you tell me? Maya whispered. Because you would have made me choose differently, Joon said quietly. You would have told me not to sign. You would have said you weren't worth it. You would have. His voice cracked. You would have left. And I couldn't risk that. I couldn't risk losing you. So you lied. I protected you from a choice you shouldn't have had to make. That wasn't your decision. Maya stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the floor. You gave up your inheritance, your father's restaurant, and you hid it from me because you thought I couldn't handle it? Because you thought I was too fragile, too unsure too. Because I love you. Joon stood too, his voice breaking on every word. Because I would give up 1,000 restaurants, 1,000 inheritances, 1,000 mothers if it meant spending one more day with you. Because you are the only thing in my life that I chose for me, and I wasn't going to let anything, not tradition, not duty, not money, take that away. Silence. Maya stared at him, tears streaming down her face. You gave up everything, she whispered. I gave up things. I didn't give up everything. Everything is you. Soon-hee stood slowly. Maya's sigh, she said, using the Korean honorific for the first time. I have been cruel to you. I have manipulated you. I have tried to break you. And you would be right to hate me. I don't hate you, Maya said quietly. I pity you. The words hung in the air. Soon-hee's face showed the impact. Not anger but recognition. Understanding. You pity me because I almost destroyed the one thing I love most, Soon-hee said. My son. You pity me because I let fear make me into someone I don't recognize. You pity me because even now, sitting here, I don't know how to fix what I've broken. You can't fix it, Maya said. Not all of it. Not the recording, not the letter, not the mass text. Those scars are permanent. I know. But, Maya took a shaky breath. You can start by telling me the truth. All of it. No more manipulation. No more games. Just the truth. Soon-hee nodded slowly. She sat back down, gesturing for Maya and Joon to do the same. When they were seated, Soon-hee began to speak. When Joon's father died, I made him a promise at his funeral. I promised that I would raise Joon to honor his father's legacy. That I would make sure he understood his culture, his language, his history. That I would protect him from losing himself in a world that wanted to erase where he came from. She looked at her hands. For 16 years I kept that promise. Joon worked in the restaurant. He sent money. He called every week. He was the perfect son. And I built my entire identity around being his mother. Had no friends. No hobbies. No life outside of him and this restaurant. He was everything. And then he met me, Maya said quietly. And then he met you. When he looked up. And I saw him change. He smiled more. He laughed more. He talked about a future that didn't include me at the center. And I panicked. Because if he didn't need me anymore, who was I? So you tried to make him need you, Joon said, his voice flat. Yes. Soon he didn't flinch from the truth. I tried to make you need me. I tried to make you choose. I tried to prove that loving her would mean losing me so you would. She stopped. Took a breath. So you would pick me. And when I picked her anyway, I tried to destroy it. Because if I couldn't have you, I wanted to make sure she couldn't either. I wanted. Soon-hee's voice broke completely. I wanted you to hurt the way I was hurting. And that makes me a monster. The silence that followed was suffocating. Maya looked at Soon, he really looked at her. At the gray in her hair, the lines around her eyes, the way her hands shook as she held her teacup. She saw a woman who'd spent 16 years building her life around one person, only to watch that person choose a different future. She saw loneliness, and fear, and desperate, misguided love that had curdled into something toxic. You're not a monster, Maya said finally. You're just human. And humans do terrible things when they're scared of being alone. Soon he looked at her, and something in her face cracked open. I don't know how to stop being scared, she whispered. Then learn. Maya's voice was gentle but firm. Learn how to be Joon's mother without being his whole world. Learn how to love him without controlling him. Learn how to make space for the life he wants to build, even if it doesn't look like the life you imagined. And if I can't, then you'll lose him. Not to me. Not to America. Not to cultural differences. You'll lose him because you refuse to let him grow up. Soon he absorbed this. Nodded slowly. What do you want from me? She asked. Right now. What would make this? She gestured vaguely. What would make this survivable? Maya looked at Joon. At his exhausted face, his trembling hands, the weight he'd been carrying alone for 3 months. I want you to give him back his inheritance, Maya said. Soon-hee's eyes widened. What? The papers he signed. Tear them up. Give him back his share of the restaurant. Not because he's marrying me. Not because you've changed your mind about us. But because it's his. It's his father's legacy. And you had no right to make him choose between his family's past and his family's future. Maya, Joon started. No. Maya turned to him. You gave it up to protect me. I'm asking her to give it back to protect you. Because you shouldn't have to sacrifice your history to build your future. Joon stared at her, and something in his face, the exhaustion, the pain, the weight, began to lift. Soon-hee was quiet for a long time. Then she stood, walked to a drawer behind the counter, and pulled out a folder. She brought it back to the table and set it in front of Joon. The papers, she said quietly. I've been carrying them with me. I think part of me always knew I would have to give them back. Joon opened the folder. Inside were the documents he'd signed 3 months ago. Legal papers transferring his ownership share to his cousin, removing him from the family business. Soon-hee picked up a pen. And in front of both of them, she wrote across the documents in large Korean characters. Void. There, she said. It's yours again. All of it. The restaurant. The legacy. Your father's dream. It's yours, no matter who you marry. Joon's hands shook as he touched the voided papers. Tears spilled down his face. Iyama. I should never have asked you to choose, Soon-hee said. I should never have made your love conditional. I should never have. She stopped. Looked at Maya. I should never have tried to drive away the woman who makes you this happy. Maya felt something break open in her chest. Not the splintering crack of the last few days, but something else. Something like release. I'm sorry, Soon-hee said to Maya. For everything. For the letter you couldn't read. For the recording. For the ultimatum that was a trap. For the mass text. For every moment I made you feel like you weren't enough. You are. Her voice broke. You are more than enough. And my son is lucky to have found you. Maya couldn't speak. Tears streamed down her face. Soon-hee stood. I will leave you two alone now. You have much to talk about. But before I go, I want to say one more thing. She looked at Joon. Then at Maya. Then back at Joon. If you still want to get married, tomorrow, next week, next year, I will come. I will sit in the front row. I will smile. And I will welcome Maya into our family the way I should have from the beginning. Not because I've suddenly stopped being afraid. But because I love you more than I fear the future. She walked to the door. Paused with her hand on the handle. And Maya sighed. Thank you. For what? For loving my son enough to fight for him. Even when I made it impossible. Then she was gone, leaving Maya and Joon alone in the quiet restaurant. They sat in silence for a long time. Finally Maya spoke. You gave up your inheritance for me. I would do it again. You shouldn't have had to. I know. But I did. And I'd make the same choice tomorrow. He took her hand. Maya, these last 3 months have been hell. Watching you doubt yourself, watching you break under the weight of her expectations, watching you wonder if you were enough. It's been the hardest thing I've ever done. And I'm sorry I hid the inheritance from you. I'm sorry I tried to protect you from a choice that wasn't mine to make. I'm sorry for all of it. I'm sorry too, Maya whispered. For doubting us. For doubting myself. For letting her get inside my head until I couldn't tell the difference between my fears and her manipulation. So where does that leave us? Maya looked at him. At this man who'd given up everything for her. Who'd stood between her and his mother's cruelty. Who'd chosen her over and over, even when choosing her cost him everything he'd known. It leaves us with a choice, she said quietly. Do we get married tomorrow like we planned? Do we postpone and take time to heal? Do we, her voice caught, do we walk away from each other before we've both lost too much? Joon's face showed every emotion at once, hope and fear and love and grief. What do you want? He asked. And this time Maya knew the answer. I want to marry you, she said. Not tomorrow. Not until we've both had time to breathe without feeling like we're drowning. Not until you've reconciled with your mother in a way that's healthy instead of desperate. Not until I can look in the mirror and see someone who believes she deserves this love. Joon's face fell. But, Maya continued, squeezing his hand, I want to marry you. Eventually. When we're both whole enough to build something real. When loving each other doesn't require constant sacrifice. When we can be happy without having to fight for every moment of peace. How long? His voice was barely audible. I don't know. 6 months. A year. However long it takes for us to find our way back to each other without all the weight we've been carrying. That's not walking away. No. Maya cupped his face in her hands. That's choosing to stay. But choosing to stay healthy. Choosing to love you without losing myself. Choosing to build a foundation strong enough to support the life we want, instead of standing on rubble and hoping it holds. Joon closed his eyes, leaning into her touch. I'm scared that if we postpone, we'll never make it back to each other. Then we'll be scared together. But Joon. She waited until he opened his eyes. If we get married tomorrow, we'll be standing at that altar still bleeding from everything that's happened. Still carrying Soon-hee's voice in our heads. Still wondering if love is enough. I don't want to start our marriage like that. I want to start it whole. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he nodded. Okay, he whispered. Okay. We wait. We heal. We build something real. And then when we're ready we get married. And it'll be ours. Not mine or yours or my mother's. Ours. Ours, Maya echoed. They sat there in the quiet restaurant holding each other, both of them crying, both of them exhausted, both of them finally honest. 6 months later. Maya stood in the kitchen of the apartment she and Joon had moved into together. A new place, not the one filled with memories of the worst months of their lives. Sunlight streamed through the windows. The smell of coffee filled the air. Joon was at the counter, making breakfast the way his grandmother had taught him. Slow, deliberate, with love in every motion. They'd spent 6 months in therapy, individual and couples. 6 months learning to communicate without the weight of Soon-hee's manipulation crushing them. 6 months building a relationship based on partnership instead of proving something to the world. Soon-hee visited once a month. The visits were awkward and careful, but they were visits. She was learning to be a mother instead of a captor. Learning to love without controlling. It was slow, painful, but it was progress. And today. Are you nervous? Joon asked, sliding a plate of eggs and rice across to her. Maya looked at the small jewelry box sitting on the table. Inside was the engagement ring she'd given back to him 6 months ago, when they'd decided to pause and heal. This morning he'd asked her, quietly, privately, with no pressure and no audience, if she was ready to wear it again. A little, she admitted. We don't have to. If you're not ready. I'm ready. Maya picked up the box, opened it. The ring caught the morning light. I'm ready to be engaged again. I'm ready to start planning a wedding. I'm ready to, she smiled. I'm ready to marry you. Joon's face lit up with a joy so pure it took her breath away. He slipped the ring onto her finger. Fit perfectly. So, he said, grinning. Should we set a date? Yes. But Joon. Yeah. This time we plan it together. No secrets. No sacrifices. No one gets to announce anything without asking us first. Deal. They ate breakfast in comfortable silence, the morning sun painting everything gold. Maya's phone buzzed. A text from Soon. Would it be okay if I brought someone to the wedding? I've been seeing someone. Kind man. I think you would like him. No pressure. I wanted to ask. I am trying to build a life that is more than just waiting for you to visit. Iyama. Maya showed Joon the text. He read it, his eyes widening. She's dating someone. Apparently. They looked at each other. And laughed. Real, genuine laughter. The kind they'd almost forgotten how to make. Tell her yes, Joon said. Tell her we're happy for her. Maya typed back. Of course. We're happy for you. Can't wait to meet him. Maya and Joon. She set down her phone. Looked at the man across from her. At the ring on her finger. At the apartment they'd built together. Filled with both their cultures, both their histories, both their dreams. We made it, she whispered. We made it, he agreed. And this time when he kissed her, it didn't taste like goodbye or sacrifice or proving something to the world. Tasted like coming home.